Anti-Slavery Australia has been operating for 10 years now at UTS, and our mission is to work to abolish slavery and human trafficking in Australia. And we do that in a number of ways, through research and policy development. We also provide access to legal advice for men, women and children who have been trafficked into Australia. We've got a lot of students involved in our work. We do online development work for our website. We have a new e-learning program that's just been launched. It was funded by the Australian government, and it's designed to teach people across Australia about human trafficking and slavery. It's one of the things that we know is that many people in Australia are unaware that slavery happens here in Australia, so we developed this online training program that will be accessible for free across the whole of Australia, and people can look at it, learn about slavery and trafficking, find out what to do if they're worried that a person might be experiencing that kind of exploitation. My role, I am an academic at UTS and I teach law. I'm also Director of Anti-Slavery Australia, which is part of my role here at UTS in the law faculty. So my day-to-day role involves some research, maybe some policy development, working with others in our team to do what we can on a daily basis to abolish slavery in Australia. Well, I have a particular skill in that I am an immigration lawyer as well as an academic, and I found that I could use that skill in a pro bono way for the benefit of those who had experienced trafficking and slavery. I'm also, aware of the complexity of the legal process, and I've been very happy to contribute my own skill to the journey for freedom. Well, one of the interesting things is that most people think about human trafficking as being exploitation of women in the sex industry. And certainly that has been the focus of most of the activity in Australia, and most of the cases that have been identified have been women who have been subject to exploitation. But we know that there are people who are trafficked in many different kinds of industries, including in a private home, in construction, in a commercial kitchen. When you go out for dinner sometime, it's possible that the person who's cooking your food may in fact be trafficked or subject to forced labour. So it's really important that we all do learn about the indicators of trafficking and forced labour and slavery, so that people, are identified and have protections available to them. Quite often, those who have been affected by such exploitation, they want to tell their story to government officials. They may be interested in a criminal justice response. So they have been exploited, they've been harmed, and they want to take some kind of action against that harm, and they do that by working with the police, possibly. We do have in Australia a particular framework, visa framework, that's been established to provide protection for those who can assist the Australian law authorities, and in some cases there may even be a permanent visa available, after there has been a contribution to law enforcement, and if there also would be a fear of returning back to the home country. There are other kinds of visa pathways as well, and other kinds of recoveries that are available. You know, one of the difficult things is that we really don't know what the dimension of trafficking and slavery is in Australia. There are some official statistics that can help us understand, and some of those are provided by the Australian Government, the Australian Federal Police, who report that they've done almost 500 investigations and assessments of people who may be trafficked, you know, over a 10-year time period. But you know, many people who work in this area believe that the actual number is much larger than that. Australia has been developing a sustained response to trafficking and slavery, but there's still more to do to promote awareness about these kinds of human rights abuses, so that there are greater protections. We have many roles, and you know, if you think about what do we need to do to abolish slavery, then you know, clearly there are many responses. So we have engaged in a process of consultation with other organisations and the Australian Government, and as a result of consultation in Australia now, we do have new laws that are more responsive to human trafficking and slavery. So from last year, for instance, we have a standalone offence of forced labour. It's a crime in Australia to keep a person in a condition of forced labour. We now have a crime of forced marriage. But we're involved in legislative reform, we're involved in policy work, we do a lot of outreach. We have a program called our Youth Advocates program, and our youth advocates are young people who work with us, who then go into the community, into schools, to raise awareness about these forms of exploitation in Australia. This week, for instance, we've got one team going out to a primary school and another team going to a university to talk about slavery and trafficking in Australia. And clearly those presentations will look different, but in each case they are about explaining what it means to be controlled and enslaved and exploited. We're really concerned to look at a whole range of different strategies that can be developed to prevent slavery and trafficking. One very important program is to ensure that people who are coming into Australia have good information about the rights and entitlements to protection in Australia. So, for instance, you know, we have advocated for quite some time that every person coming here should be provided information about the 000 emergency phone number, for example, information about the work of Fair Work Australia and other organisations. But boosting awareness and information about Australian legal protections is important. It's also critical to look at pathways for safe migration, temporary migration or permanent migration, to minimise the avenues for exploitation. And you know, clearly working with international organisations is absolutely critical. And if you think about it holistically, there are huge systemic challenges around the world that undoubtedly impact on migration flows, on human trafficking and on forced labour. We work in partnership with many organisations and with governments as well, and our partners would include the Australian Red Cross, Australian Catholics Against Trafficking in Humans, Immigrant Women Speak Out, Asian Women at Work, Scarlet Alliance. There are many organisations that we work with on a daily basis, as well as state and federal government agencies. And the Australian Government has established a national roundtable against human trafficking and slavery, and we are on that round table, and through that forum work very closely with groups across Australia who share the goal of abolishing slavery in Australia. We have a lot of success stories. We've helped women gain freedom in Australia. We've reunited children with their mothers. We've worked with the Australian government to change legislation. We've done a huge amount of work in awareness raising, in developing really good, high quality information about trafficking and slavery. We've got a great website. We promote information through Facebook and Twitter. We're trying to engage with as many people as possible. Fundraising is important to what we do, and we work with organisations also who are interested in fundraising for us. One of our main beliefs is that we protect the identity of those that we've worked with. So we really try not to use a person's story without their direct permission, because that is a form of exploitation, really. And we also don't really provide links between media and those that we've assisted, recognising the power imbalance that exists between us as holders of professional skill and those who have been exploited in Australia. So I'm always very hesitant about speaking very much about any of those that we've been able to help, but I can say most clearly that we have seen the face of freedom as a result of the work that we've done. A couple of years ago, we worked with the Australian Human Rights Commission to develop guidelines for organisations working with trafficked people. And we try and embody the guidelines that we developed in our daily work. And really, it is absolutely critical that we understand and recognise the humanity of every person that we work with. And this means that we will keep their information confidential, that we will respect their privacy. And, we are concerned not to exploit a person's story. Now, that is their story, it's their life. They may make a decision at some point to give further currency to their own experiences. But we don't use the experiences of others without their permission, and we don't ask others to tell their stories. Additionally, there may be elements of safety involved, particularly for those who may have assisted in an Australian law enforcement investigation. It may be better for them not to engage with media and tell stories publicly. Well, you're welcome to contact us through our website, antislavery.org.au. There's an email address there, and we'd welcome hearing from you if you'd like to contribute to our work. You can also make donations through the website. Thank you.